What makes a great mentor? Someone who hands you the answers, or someone who helps you discover your own? Today's guest, Dr. Alice Kim, is the latter. She's the chair of psychology at the University of Guelph-Humber, a leading researcher in memory and learning, and a recipient of the 2025 Outstanding Mentorship Award. Dr. Kim is known for helping students see their potential, take on challenges they never imagined, and thrive, both in and beyond the classroom. Get ready for an inspiring conversation with Dr. Alice Kim, mentor, scholar, and champion of student success.
I'm Mia Rizzo.
And I'm Dr. Lee. And welcome back to the Enriched Mindset Podcast. Today, we're joined by Dr. Alice Kim, a cognitive psychologist, educator, and researcher whose work dives into how we learn, remember, and think. From memory strategies to improving how we study and teach, Dr. Kim helps bridge the gap between research and real life. She's passionate about making psychology accessible and applicable, not just in classrooms, but in everyday life.
In this episode, we chat about how memory really works, what makes learning stick, study tips that actually hold up in research, and how our environments shape the way we think. Whether you're a student, teacher, or just someone who loves understanding the mind, you'll want to hear this. Let's dive in.
All right, Dr. Kim, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here today.
Great. It's wonderful to have you here. We like to start our podcast with a couple of dad jokes. Are you
Dad
ready?
jokes?
Dad jokes.
Oh,
yeah.
I love dad jokes.
Oh, awesome.
Okay.
That'll be great then. All right. So what do you call it when you're diagnosed with the fear of giants?
I don't know.
You don't know? Fee-fi-phobia.
Actually, I know. Okay, our second one. Why did the neuron get promoted?
Oh, I feel like I should know this. I don't know.
Because it had great connection.
Oh my God.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get started. Your academic journey started in human behavioral biology and led you to cognitive neuroscience and education. Can you share a pivotal moment that sparked your passion for learning and teaching?
Oh, wow. You know what? It's hard to say because there are so many, I would say, everyday kind of experiences that I think just accumulated and really led to this strong desire for me to actually start teaching. I actually did not start teaching until after, and I mean in a formal sense, in a classroom. I did not start teaching until after I completed my PhD as a postdoctoral fellow. But during my graduate studies as a master's student and a PhD student, I did do a lot of mentoring. So younger students, undergraduate students, students who were earlier on in their graduate studies. So there is this type of teaching. Teaching and learning doesn't just happen in the classroom. It doesn't just happen in the lab. It happens everywhere. But certainly throughout my graduate studies, I did do a lot of informal teaching as a mentor. And I really enjoyed, I don't want to say helping, but I enjoyed certainly passing on knowledge, helping others gain skills and also gain confidence, and watching everyone grow together. Just being part of that was very rewarding. Maybe equally, or if not more so rewarding than my own research, I found. And so, that is something that I remember thinking about throughout my graduate studies, because I was really planning on focusing on research. I wasn't really raised in a way where, teaching was going to be my focus. And I was actually not, again, as I said, not teaching actually until I completed my formal graduate studies. So pivotal moment, I don't know if there's a pivotal moment, but I think maybe a realization that it was very rewarding for me to be in this role where, not just mentoring, but also being mentored. And I know what a difference that made for me because I had great mentors, but also this collaborative environment where you're teaching and you're learning together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of students post on LinkedIn where they're shouting you out as a mentor, and curious where that came from. So you mentioned having mentors as a student. Can you
Yeah,
talk about that? How did that come
absolutely.
about?
I think I was very privileged. I think I was very blessed to have close relationships to professors throughout my undergraduate studies. I actually thought out of high school that I would probably apply to medical school because that is I just didn't really know that much about different career options until I started exploring, that's what education is. You go to university and you start learning about lots of things. But anyway, so I had this motivation to gain a lot of research experience as an undergraduate student. So I applied for a lot of research assistant positions and fellowships. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, I've worked with a lot of different types of doctors, psychiatrists, oncologists, and eventually led into psychological research. And through these independent studies, research assistantships, fellowships, I've really been blessed by all these opportunities, but also being the only one really that they worked with in many instances. So I received a lot of time and attention and a lot of dialogue and conversation. And I think that in many ways it shaped the way that I think and see the world and try to navigate the world from these early experiences. But certainly later on during my graduate studies and my postdoctoral fellowships, I had a lot of great mentors as well. So, I mean, I think it was just a motivation and curiosity to have these experiences where I sought it out.
Mm.
And I think I was just, you know, in this context, in our city where we live, there's a lot of opportunity. And I think it's just also being open minded. I mean, I will say, as you mentioned, I started off in biology, human behavioral biology, and I ended up in psychology. And I think it was just being open to cross disciplinary names or titles and just follow your interests. Um, and and I think that as much as I've received from my own mentors and how much knowledge and wisdom they really passed on to me explicitly. I mean, that's a time savings when someone just tells you explicitly, like, here's what you should do, here's what
Mm.
you should check out. Certainly you could learn this on your own through your own life experiences and just navigating life. But it's a lot quicker and a lot more helpful if someone could kind of guide you in the right direction. It saves you so much time. So, as much as I've received all this support, I would say even now, I have great mentors now, even. If I can say I'm an adult, I have adult mentors now. I really, I think it's important to pass that on to
Yeah.
students as well, especially I would say, I mean, I don't want to steer the conversation, but students who otherwise would not maybe receive this information. So I'm thinking about first generation students, for example,
Mm.
who don't have the social capital to
Yeah.
navigate university in a very successful way. Whereas, if for my children, my husband and I, we we do have the experience of navigating higher education, particularly in Canada, in a Canadian context. So we can certainly, provide that kind of advice to our children. But if you're coming from a different country where things are done very differently, or, if you don't have parents who have gone through this system, I mean, it's a journey to go through higher education.
Hmm.
So I think that it's important for me to be able to share this information as much as I can with all of my students.
Hmm.
For sure. And that's great. And thank you for that. What could you say excites you the most about psychology and its ability to bridge theory and practice?
Oh, wow. Okay. What excites me the most? I think it's just so relevant to everybody. I think it's uh, all disciplines, I think, are very important. What's always struck me about psychology is how important it is to humanity, because psychology is about understanding ourselves, understanding others, understanding why people do the things that they do, why do they think the things that they think, and how can we cooperate and work together. So I think, as much as there's a lot of theory in psychology, there's a lot of opportunity for application. In our worlds, in the worlds that we live in, our experiences, at the center of it is humanity and people. And I think psychology is everywhere. Wherever there's people, there's psychology.
Yeah, you kind of answered our next question, which was why should students study psychology? But maybe I can just ask about the school that you're the chair of, Guelph Hamburg. Why should students attend your school? What is something about your school that you're really proud of?
Okay, I would say, I would first say all schools are great. Schools are great. I really love the University of Guelph Hamburg and my program because I know how student-centered and how student-focused we are. We have a very, I would say we prioritize meeting our students where they are, and we recognize that not everybody is coming with the same experiences. And I think it's important to celebrate these differences because these differences are what makes all of us stronger and our communities stronger as well. We have a great team that is really focused on what the students are actually doing. When I think about education, it's not just what happens in the classroom. What are students doing throughout their whole undergraduate career, for example? Are they getting involved? Are they connecting? Are they making strong relationships with faculty? Are they creating these bonds? Also, when it comes to learning, what are the students actually doing? Are they, more passively receiving information? Are they putting this information into action? Are they embedding it into their knowledge network? Are they feeling confident about their ability to use this information? So at the heart of it, that is what we're focusing on in our program. The main thing is connection, connecting with our students, making sure that they know that we really want to meet them where they are, right? And making them feel comfortable to try new things, ask questions, but also getting them to be proactive and, integrating, like really, really absorbing all these lessons and thinking about how they're relevant, why they're important, and potentially what they could do with this information to help society.
Nice, thank you. Based on your studies and your research and our society today, are there any harsh statistics that psych majors should be aware of in terms of future career prospects before they launch into their studies?
That is a great question, and I'll say it's been a while since I looked at some hard statistics to answer that question, but I can say just general trends. I think a lot of young people. I think there's a lot of reasons why young people pursue psychology as a discipline, as a career. I think many come in watching a lot of what's on media and what they think psychology is based on what's being available to them. And I think in many cases that might be, and forgive me if I'm wrong because there's many other young people in here that would know better, but I think that would a lot of times be like a forensic psychologist or a clinical psychologist, or maybe you think a psychologist is someone like Fraser. I'm not sure. I don't even want to assume what young people conceive of when they think of psychology.
Do you know what Fraser is? Have you heard of the show Fraser?
I think I have.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, that was a fifth.
I know what you're talking about.
But I think that, what I can say generally is of the large population of young people who do pursue psychology, a much smaller portion will pursue graduate studies. I think Dr. Lee can speak to this much more. And I think at the epitome, many students come in wanting to be a clinical psychologist because that's how they kind of conceptualize psychology at a younger age. And then you come in and then, it's less and less and less. And then when you think about how many of these students will actually hold a position like a professor at a university or a clinical psychologist, it's much, much less. But I would say, to qualify that, I would say that the world is changing. I would say that a lot of jobs are probably going to change. And I think that a degree in psychology actually opens up many opportunities because, again, wherever there are people, there is psychology. And what I would like my students to know is that there are a lot of applications of psychology. I completely see the importance of clinical psychologists. We need clinical psychologists. We need professors at universities. But you know what? I think that the world it would do a whole lot of good if young people would also take these lessons of psychology and apply them in ways that maybe they're not even being applied right now. I think it's applying psychology in unconventional ways is probably where we're going to see a lot of impact in the future.
Right. Now, when I was a student, undergrad student, in my first 2 years, I felt like psychology was just about memorizing a textbook. Until I guess third, fourth year, the classes were smaller and more focused. But your research focuses on how cognitive learning principles can apply in the classroom in course design. So, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about how students learn?
Okay. Well, I think we did a TikTok video that covered one, which is learning styles. Depending on on who is in your circle, maybe you've heard of a lot about this myth or not, but it's this idea that people will learn better based on whether they receive the information in the way that they prefer to receive information. Now, it undoubtedly, most, if not all people can say how they prefer to receive information. Maybe you like to see it visually. Maybe you like to hear it. Maybe you like to do something where it involves moving around to absorb that information. But the research shows that, following this preference, doesn't actually lead to better learning. It's not to say, I'm not against accommodating these preferences, but as long as we all understand, it doesn't actually lead to better learning.
Right.
There are other things that you can do. If you have that energy and time to invest, there are other things to really focus on that will actually lead to retaining information and better learning. So I think that is one of the biggest myths. I don't, and again, depending on your circles, it's talked about a lot, but actually it's still very much being followed. This idea that we have learned, we learn better if we follow our preferences, and there are learning styles, and we all have a different learning style.
Yeah, maybe you can clarify that for our audience. Like, I guess intuitively, you would think if a person believes that will help them learn, like what's going on there? It's just a perception, and it's not.
It is a perception. I mean, one thing I would say, let's not confound your preference for how to receive information with your engagement and your motivation and your alertness.
Okay, yeah. So that makes a difference then? Like,
yes, I would say if a student or if someone is more engaged and they're paying more attention, they're more excited and they're more confident, I think that would lead to better encoding of information and better retention of information. But if we just compare the presentation mode, for example, presenting something to you visually versus saying it to you, does that make more sense?
Right.
Yeah.
So if you just change the mode without looking into like people's intrinsic motivations, it doesn't necessarily make a difference.
Right, exactly.
Okay. But if they are more engaged, does it translate to more
I
better
would say
learning?
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
That's interesting. To piggyback off of what you were saying before, what are some cognitive strategies that could be beneficial to improving memory and learning retention?
It's my favorite topic. Well, I mean, there is a whole bunch. I mean, I don't know how much time we have. Let me know when I should stop. Okay. The first one, the easiest one is retrieving the information on your own. Like it's called retrieval practice. So, and again, it goes back to what are students actually doing? Are they sitting there passively and receiving information, or are they doing something more active? So retrieval practice would require students to, after they've received the information, to try to recall it on their own from memory. And a lot of students don't enjoy doing this because it's cognitively effortful.
Right.
And a lot of times you don't feel good about it because a lot of times you won't remember. It's just the way it is, right? But what the research shows is this attempt to retrieve information, right, is that, and even though it's very effortful and not very comfortable, let's just say that, it leads to better retention. The trick is you want to make sure that you're retrieving the correct information and not that. That's the important part, checking that you've actually got the answer right. That's one. Another one is also, I think, something that a lot of students don't like to hear when I say this, but it's the opposite of cramming. So spacing out your study sessions. I don't want to get into, unless you want me to, but like what the forgetting curve looks like, what memory retention or our memory performance would look like if you practice retrieving information with breaks in between. So the idea is, if you have a certain amount of time to study, a lot of my students are super busy. Students are they're busier than I was when I was a student. They have lots of things to do. They have jobs. They have family responsibilities. They don't have a limitless number of time to study. So it's all about making the most of the time that you do have. And so you can organize yourself so that you are studying for that social psychology test 20 minutes every day of the week for 5 days instead of taking all that time and cramming it into one very long session right before the test.
And one of the things I found interesting about being a university student was realizing that professors aren't often taught how to teach. And then when I became a grad student, realizing how many professors actually dislike teaching and do it because they have to do it. So, I mean, it's an interesting observation. Knowing this, like, how can educators in the university system apply cognitive neuroscience to better increase the engagement of students? And is this actually part of training professors to teach better? Is that something that is a priority, or is it actually implemented?
I think it's a priority. Yeah. I think there's differences across institutions, but certainly at the University of Guelph Humber, it is a priority to support our faculty as much as we can so that they're teaching as effectively as possible. And that does include, and that does include, course design and course delivery. So in terms of how to apply cognitive learning principles, it could be as easy as asking students during the first 10 minutes of class, what do you remember from last class? And then seeing where there are gaps and where you can kind of do more of a recap or what topics you need to focus on more. I like to always bring up past lessons throughout. So we have a 12-week schedule, so 12 lectures per term. And, the thing is, if we follow a textbook, for example, if instructors follow the textbook, you will have a different topic or different theme every week. But as instructors with agency, we can always jump back and talk about, remember what we talked about 2 weeks ago? Like, who remembers that? Tell me how this connects with what we're doing now. And to invite students to think back about these topics. See, it's one thing to tell students you should be engaging in retrieval practice. You should be spacing out your studying. You should be doing this type of encoding where you have visual encoding and a narrative encoding together. It's called dual processing. But it's another thing to actually take it into your own hands and incorporate these principles in the way that you teach. So, for example, as an instructor, you can supply or present your students with a visual that will help them understand a concept, but also represent it in a different way where you explain it using text or language. So they have two streams of information, two different ways to encode this concept, right? It's up to the instructor whether they want to give formative assessments. So, the types of assessments where students don't necessarily need to be graded on these assessments, but it's a good way to indicate to students what they should be focusing on, like little pop quizzes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of Kahoot.
Yes.
Okay, see, I'm still
Yes.
relevant here. So these like fun kind of games, or it
Yeah.
doesn't even have to be fun. It could just be a quiz on a piece of paper that isn't marked. But that's a gift. I think that's a gift to students because it helps them identify what do you need to focus on. There is this study that shows that undergraduate students, when they're given an opportunity to retake a test, they will spend more time studying the information that they got right on the test as opposed to what they got wrong. I mean, this goes back to comfort and feeling good about yourself, right? Like, let me focus on the things that I know, and let me just revisit this just to make sure I remember. But, a better way to make use of your time would be to focus on those questions that you got wrong. So this leads into assessing what is it that, your assessment of how well you are learning. What do you think that you're going to remember, or what do you think you understood, and what do you think that you did not understand well? So it's about metacognition.
Awesome.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of just following, I like that it's important to tap into different learning styles when you're exploring like a lecture in front of like a big audience. We know that your work explores factors that impact the students' learning abilities and their trajectories. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen students face in engaging in their education, and how can an educational institution better support them in this process?
That is a great question. And I'll say this, when I started teaching as a postdoctoral fellow, I thought it was all about cognitive learning principles. I think it's very important, don't get me wrong. I thought it was important for students to understand how to make the most of their time, how to study most effectively. And as I gain more experience teaching, I have to say that there are layers. There, as you both know, probably better than myself, as especially as a clinical psychologist, there's a lot of layers to each individual. And I think what has become more important is actually connecting with the students. Like all of this talk, I will say this, all of this talk about cognitive learning principles, let me help you study better, it actually doesn't mean anything if the student is not connecting with you and they're not actually hearing you. So I would say, some of my more recent research, and it's forthcoming too, it really shows the importance of connecting with students as an instructor and fostering this kind of classroom community where students are connected with their peers and they're connected with you as the instructor. There needs to be this environment where students are hearing you, I should say listening to you, because people can hear, it doesn't mean they're listening though. Sure. So I think that's the biggest thing. And it's not just about connecting with students to share this. Let's say we have wisdom. We want to share it with our students. But before that, we kind of have to, we do have to build this, I'll say, trust where they open up and they're listening. Because I think, you come into a room, there's so many students. I mean, some classrooms are larger than others. Ours are actually quite small relative to others. But still, it's all these other people. And a lot of times, they're coming in with whatever else is going on in their lives. Right. And they're not necessarily ready to listen. So, let alone listen to your lecture, but like listening to you, who as a mentor, as an instructor, you're trying to give them some advice on how to learn better. It doesn't really work well. I think you really need to give that time for students to see, like, I'm here for you. I want to meet you where you are, and I really value who you are at this moment.
Yeah. I mean, I really resonate with that. And I think like in psychology in particular, when people start at a university, they take intro psych.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes there's some of these universities have 1,000 students. A lot of the people taking it are taking it as an elective.
Yes.
You don't really feel that sense of community. And it's easier for people now after COVID, I think, to like be more into their, like,
Yes.
shelter themselves if you're an introvert, I think it's become easier to be less connected. So I think that's really amazing work that you're doing. It just kind of leads to my next question about experiential learning. So you emphasize experiential learning. So how do hands-on experiences change the way students learn compared to traditional lectures? And what is Guelph Humber doing that in particular to foster this type of learning?
Yeah. Great questions. I will say that I studied memory during my master's and my PhD, and we know that we're more likely to remember things if they have some importance to us, or if they relate to us, or if there's some emotional connection versus something that is just presented to us. Do you know what I mean? Like the more that we find information linked to us, we're going to remember it better. And so it comes down to, again, the most important thing I think is always, what are the students doing? So if you compare students sitting in a classroom, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because we do this as well, like sitting down, receiving a lecture, I will say that we try to be more engaging, more interactive. We try to have discussions. We do the retrieval practice. We do all these things, right? But there's that. But then there's actually going out there, engaging with the content in a way that you're putting it into action, or you're doing something tangible with it. It becomes way more self-relevant. Also, there's the student having much more agency and connecting the dots, and they're doing something meaningful. There's that emotional component too. When we do our placements, the students go out. So we have a placement course, and students spend a minimum of 100 hours out in the community applying what they've learned in their psychology classes in the real world in a way that would benefit our community. So we know, first of all, our students, they come to Guelph Humber because they know they want to help people. And they come to psychology because they want to help people, they want to learn about people so that they can help them. So in their third year, when they do their placement course, that is what they're doing. They've taken enough courses that they have this mass amount of information, and now they're applying it, whether it's human development, whether it's about some more to do with cultural psychology or social psychology, whatever they have interest in, they're out there, they're connecting with people. So that's a lesson that we always try to focus in on. It's important to connect with people, right? First, you have to connect with people in order to help them. We're not robots. We can't just come up to you and say, let me fix you. No, it doesn't work like that. A lot of the time it's more just about being there for someone so that they can work things out on their own, right? Anyhow, so back to our students applying what they know. They feel good. They feel good because they know they're making a difference, and they know that they're using the information that they learned in class. So second year, they take all these classes, they're in the classroom, and now they're applying it, and they feel so good about it. And then they talk about it, and they say, yeah, I remember talking about Maslow's hierarchy, and I shared this information. I explained it to the kids that I'm working with. I remember this part. And, it made so much sense, and I helped them organize their schedule, and it made a difference to those people. So I think it's really important to of course have that knowledge. You need to learn about the discipline and the lessons, and then to not only apply it, but do so in a way where you're helping people, because then you have that added positive emotional component.
Now, this placement program, I'm just curious to learn more about it.
Absolutely.
I work with a lot of psychology co-op students. They often lament how few opportunities there are in the co-op system. So for this program, do you have examples of organizations that students work with, and how could an employer get involved in that? Oh yeah,
absolutely. So I do believe our university is quite known for this, our placement program. I asked students, I just came back from a field course from the UK, so I had a lot of time to spend with students on the train, and I asked them, why did you choose this program, just out of curiosity? And they said, they always say small classrooms. Many times they say the placement program, because we've been doing this for a long time. We have a lot of partners, who we've had relationships for like since the university started, right? So I always tell students when they ask about the placement program, this is your opportunity to try something out. Like you have an interest in psychology. We all know psychology is a very broad field. So like your interest could be miles away from your best friend's interest in the program. So pick how you'd like to apply psychology. Check out our list of this is internal, so it's not to the public, but check out our list of organizations and see if there's one that you're interested in. If not, if you don't see an organization that you want to work with, or if you have one in particular, let our placement coordinator know. Like, let her know with a lot of advance notice. There is some paperwork, there are some agreements that we need to sort out, so that everyone has a good experience, and then they're on their way. So this would happen in the winter term of their third year. And, the priority, I tell students, what you need to prioritize is your experience. You know what? If you want to be a lot of our students work with clinical psychologists, and maybe that's what you want to do. We let them know you are not going to be acting as a clinical psychologist. I mean, I try to be explicit. I try to manage everyone's expectations, and they always say, yeah, I know. But I just want to be explicit. You're not going to do that. You will probably assist in some way that is helpful to the clinical psychologist or maybe the office coordinator, but you're in the environment. It's about understanding, like forming these schemas of what it's like to be in a clinical office. How do people interact? Maybe you'll even be lucky and you can help organize some of the neuropsychological tests. That's a big thing, because then you know what it looks like and you can learn about it. These are not things that typically the general public knows about. So it's being in that space and making connections, and maybe getting a mentor. That's my advice. I always tell students, one of the things, three things: always be open, always be curious, right? And the last one, always seek out mentors. So if you want to be a clinical psychologist, seek out your clinical psychologist mentor. That's not me. I wish I could help you. Maybe it's Dr. Lee.
Do you have any practical advice on students finding a mentor? Because I think sometimes they're intimidated to approach professors or professionals. They just assume they're too busy. But at the same time, there probably is a way that is more effective versus other methods.
Yeah, I think it's super difficult, and in some contexts more than others. I know that our class sizes are much smaller than typical, so I think it's a lot easier for students in our context to approach instructors, because we also make a point of helping students feel comfortable around with our instructors. Like, we do events, we do games, we don't do dad jokes, but I'm going to take that. But they're not, they've interacted with these faculty. So, right. But I think in a larger context, I would say, I went to large universities, and I think it's about, as nervous as you may feel, asking questions, go after class and talk to your instructor. When I taught at larger universities, I've had students come up to me after lecture, and I was so happy. I was actually thrilled that they were talking to me, and we ended up working on some research together, right? So I think that I think students should give their professors the benefit of the doubt, and assume maybe that they are as interested to talking to you as you would be to them. Recently, I'll share this. I mentioned that I just got back from a field course to the UK, and that involved taking 16 students to a conference. And so it's also about you putting in the work as well. I told the students that we're going to this conference. There's going to be so many incredible talks. I mean, this is going to be amazing. And I would suggest to all of you, you have the schedule. You know who's presenting. Look them up. If there's a talk that you are interested in, look them up. Look up their research. Read about it. If you think that this is someone who you could benefit from speaking with, well, you need to do your part, right? Which is being prepared, seeing asking questions after reading their paper instead of just asking questions in general. I think it's important to demonstrate that you are, I don't want to say worthy, but you have a lot of potential. You're bright, you're hardworking, you're someone let's just say I'm the person that I would definitely want to know. I would love to see this bright firecracker become this amazing leader in the field, and I definitely want to help this person because they're proactive, they're doing the work, they're showing that they're making good use of their time and my time. I think the worst thing to do is just approach someone or approach the situation as if you're owed something, because I would say nobody is owed anything. It's more like a gift. I see mentorship as a gift. So I always try to, myself, I try to be worthy of it. Like I've had, and even now I have so many amazing mentors, like the kindest, wisest people, right? And so I try to respect that and also carry it forward with my own students.
Nice. Like you mentioned, you had brought students to the UK for a conference, which is a great experience in education and applying your knowledge. What trends or any new innovations in education are you most excited about right now?
Okay, I will say, I don't know, I'm excited, but also wary. You know what I'm going to say? Artificial intelligence. Yeah. I don't know what to make of it right now. You know, it's an interesting time. I think it's an important time. I know folks who are on both sides of the fence and on the fence in terms of, you know, AI and the impact that it has or it could have. You know, it's incredible. The potential is incredible. I think there are things to think about and definitely have some caution about. And I think it would make sense to slow some things down until we've figured that out. I saw a few talks on AI and cognition. Well, I would say AI, the use of AI in science. What I did not see and what I'm interested to see is the impact that AI has on our cognition. What is it doing to us? Like, we are learning it. I use AI. I'll be very transparent. I use AI a lot. You know, I think in an ethical way, I will say. But but like, what is that doing? You know, I'm thinking about our students. Like, you know, I'm thinking about myself. Like, I had the internet. That was great. Like, were you, don't want to age you. Okay. But like, I don't know, but like, imagine having to go to the library and photocopying everything versus using the internet and just downloading papers. Like that in itself was amazing. And now we have everything on our phones and we can access this information, but it's so fast, right? And now we have generative AI, which is something different. And I think, you know, that is different. That is different than saving time going to a library. It's different. It can be used in many different ways. But like, what is it doing to our cognition? What is it doing to us as people? I think that maybe some time has to pass before we can really tell. I did see studies about, you know, how students' writing has evolved since AI became available to the public. And it's not to say that we're not trying to catch students. It's not that. It's just that the use of it, what is that doing to, you know, the way that we convey our ideas even? And when we talk about communicating and thinking, like, what is that doing to I'll say like our brains, our cognition, our brains.
Yeah, I kind of think about things like a GPS, and if that fails, if someone could read a map. And I mean, I think because I grew up, you know, like understanding maps, I could do that, but my daughter might not. And if her internet went down, she would just be lost. You know, I think that's the same with like calculators in my day. Like we had to do things manually, but obviously there's ways to like, these things enhance our lives. But yeah, I do share the same concern that the underlying understanding of things starts to fade. But I do think it's something that is inevitable. It's just a matter of how we're going to adapt it and all the dangers that being aware of those. But yeah.
Exactly. And, on top of that, I will say as educators, we have this platform. I talk to my colleagues about this all the time. Like we are very privileged. Some of us think more about this than others, but as an educator, you know how large classrooms are. Like you have this huge platform, and so you do have to be mindful of the things that you say, but also what you do. And so I'm thinking about this right now because I do know, like I do agree with you, Dr. Lee, that
Mm-hmm.
AI is inevitable. It's inevitable. But we ask our students to use AI. We want them to become proficient at using AI so that they're as successful as possible. But what does it mean when we ask our students to use AI in terms of propagating harm? Because there's a lot, I would say that there are aspects of AI that are not in the public. And not everything has to be in the general public, but I think as leaders, educational leaders, we do need to be mindful that there is a lot of harm that there is the whole sweatshop aspect of AI. Like how are these photos? How is information tagged? How are the algorithms trained? In terms of sustainability, like the amount of energy and resources that are used to power up these AI algorithms that we're using on our smartphones like it's nothing, right? I don't, one thing that I think about, and again, I do agree that AI is inevitable, but more discussion with students about like when to use AI, be mindful of like the cost of AI, just like when we talk about fast fashion, the global impact of AI, the ethical impact of AI. It's not that I'm saying we should never use it, but also like right now, just be mindful, like right now, there's not a lot of governance on AI. And there are some groups of people who are benefiting immensely, but also groups of people who are suffering immensely.
For sure.
And I don't know that I don't know that we talk about it enough, but I think that is something that students should know about as well. And if instructors are embedding the use of AI in their assessments, there should be some caution, I think, I'm all for explicit information and explicit sharing with students about these negative or harmful consequences of using AI as well. Because it's good, it's exciting, but let's tell the whole story. If we want our students to make informed decisions, it's about telling the whole story, not just how they can benefit. Because I think, going back to psychology, like, our aim is to everything we do, our research, our practice is to benefit humanity. And so the use of AI, at least in North America, is really benefiting ourselves and not thinking about the harm it's causing to other groups of people.
And can you elaborate on that? Like, what groups do you find are kind of being disadvantaged by AI? You did mention like the environmental impact, but I'm just curious, like, what cohorts or demographics are?
Yeah. So I'll speak generally to this. So of course, the environmental impacts that I don't want to say that I am even knowledgeable enough to talk about who is being most impacted through the environmental consequences. But there are those marginalized individuals who I don't think even have voices in this whole global conversation about AI. There are the individuals who are working in very distressing kind of contacts to help supply the information that the AI is being trained on. It's not that you can just give the AI this information. For example, photos. Photos need to be tagged. The photos are not all happy, pleasant photos. Some of them are very, very, how can I say? Not damaging, but not pleasant, right? Like harmful to even look at, like obscenities, having to detail what is happening and tagging those, and not being compensated in any fair way, right? I would think about the fashion industry and fast fashion and the kind of conditions that a lot of folks had and currently are working in, right? But just switch it to this other uh, product, which is AI. So it's that. Also, we know that AI is not always equitable in the answers that it provides. So it's propagating misinformation sometimes, or information that is not, I would say, doing more harm to marginalized groups than doing more good for humanity. It's the information. I'm repeating myself now, but I'll say, like, the information is not truth, right? It's not that this AI is trained on truth. It's trained on whatever it's given. But then we have masses of people asking AI these questions and propagating, even if it's subtle, like subtle forms of harm, right? In terms of stereotypes, prejudice. Long ago, like a year ago, I asked, and it was all over the internet too. Like, you can ask AI, show me a picture of a doctor, right? And of course, it's going to be not female, right? And not a person of color. I think that there have been developments. I am still optimistic that, I understand that these things are developing, but I think we need to have these conversations with our students too and let them know, like, here are the benefits, but don't forget, or don't not consider these other things. And, hopefully AI will get better and better and better. But again, who is it benefiting? Like, the way it's being used, who is it benefiting?
Right.
Right?
Yeah. All right. So, as the chair of the psych program at University of Gulf Humber and vice chair of SOTL, is that how you say it? SOTL Canada, you play a key role in shaping psychology education. So, what have been some of the most rewarding and challenging aspects of these leadership roles?
Okay. Wow. Whoa. Really good questions. The most rewarding. It's always collaborating with colleagues and students. I think it's, the product is not as important. It's a process. We did mention the importance of connecting with individuals. It's important to connect with colleagues as well. I think that we all come with our own expertise, right? I think we have shared values. We have different experiences. And it can be challenging. I will be frank. It can be challenging to come together when our experiences have been so different and the understanding is not there, right? The mutual understanding is not yet there, and we have a certain period of time to accomplish something great, right? And I think that. I'm not trying to liken this to a factory where we want to pump out all these like great things. We want to have a lot of great things for our students, but I think the challenge for me, the lesson I learned, is to pace yourself and to take some pause and remind myself of my own research. The importance of taking time to create this atmosphere in the classroom where students feel comfortable. Also do that when I'm working with my colleagues. Also do that when I'm working with students as colleagues as well, right? To be able to slow things down, to, I don't know that I like how I say this, but in my mind I say it is okay to give up some efficiency, right? In order to be effective. And I think by effective, it means building that trust first so that we can work collaboratively, taking the time to really value your colleagues, like seeing what is their strong point behind all this surface stuff. We all have surface surface layers, but we need to really go deeper than the surface to see what are people really bringing to the table, and appreciate it and value it and really recognize it. And I think when that happens, when we do that mutually, then that's a magic. I think that's a magic. And we model it for our students too, because they see that it's important to take this time, right? It's really important to take the time to create this kind of relationship. And then everything actually from then on happens much more quickly, because you have this understanding and this trust, and you see what people's gifts are, right? And we do that with the students too. Students bring a lot. Like here's the thing. They don't come with PhDs, I'll say that, right? Because they're students, but they are so bright, and they have so much lived experiences, and they have these ideas that are so amazing and relevant. And especially when we're talking about teaching and learning, they have they have so much perspective, right? And I think, I will say, for me, and maybe I'm still going through this. I'm still learning to appreciate how much students bring to the table. I will say I think I'm a champion of students, but I know that I have more learning to do, because I've seen myself in the past. Like, I look at myself in the past thinking that I'm definitely a champion of students, and I want the best for them. But I see like these subtle, implicit decisions or things that I've said that where I could have provided students with more agency. I don't think it was not at all offensive in any way, but I just, when I look back and reflect, I can see, okay, I assumed these things. I took on the role of the person in charge. But like when we're working collaboratively, it's not that there's no hierarchy. I'm not saying that. There are always power dynamics. But what I'm saying is that I could have taken a step back and asked, right? It's interesting. I'll say, like, more recently as well, like on this idea of taking a step back and letting the person go through the process has been super powerful. Even, I hope I'm not going off topic, but even as a mentor, it's been super, super powerful for me in the last, I'll say, 3 years, to see that the biggest gift I can do for the students I mentor is not to fix a problem. I was that person. I always wanted to fix things, and students would love it. They'd feel like, at least immediately, in the immediate run, they'd be, thank you so much, thank you. And they'd be so happy. And I loved, that was my dopamine, right? Just fixing the situation. But actually, the better thing to do is let them go through this process and see, what do they actually want to happen? Maybe they just wanted to talk about it, and maybe they would fix it themselves. Maybe they come up with their own answers. And I think that it's better. I mean, it's not to say don't provide support. Always provide support, but don't jump in, assume, and fix the situation. It's more like, take a minute. I think that for me, it is still learning to pause and take that moment. And like, it's okay for there to be silence. Right. Like, learning that. You probably know as a clinical psychologist, but I never was taught that. Letting people go through the process. And maybe it doesn't, there's not a resolution in that 1 hour session with the student or with the colleague. Maybe we need to come back to this next week, and the week after, or in a month, Or maybe they start the conversation with you and they finish it on their own, and like giving them that space.
That's amazing. I think it's so important to self-reflect, especially as a person in leadership or as a mentor, to kind of reflect on previous behavior, decisions. I definitely think also being in a position of leadership, authority, it's hard to sometimes navigate that line between trying to get something done or having a goal and then meeting the student where they are and not necessarily feeling like you're maybe just kind of like reinforcing behaviors that you think might not be beneficial, but at the same time trying to put yourself in their shoes. So definitely can relate to that experience. For sure. Having mentored so many students now. Definitely not perfect, and it's really good to kind of like get feedback from students. And that's what I try and do when students complete the their term with me is to ask them to be very frank and honest about how things could have been different. I'm thinking of like making that maybe more formal or anonymous, so people can feel more free. Yeah. I'm just curious as well, like you have these leadership positions, and as a woman and as a woman of color, are there kind of unique challenges you faced in being in those positions?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question, and you're asking a lot of great questions. That's why I keep saying that. It's related to, and this is related, I promise. Mm-hmm. I have very good circles of supporters, and I think that has shielded me from many potential negative experiences. And let me maybe contextualize this or go back to my undergrad. I went to a university that is huge. It's known for the 1,000 student classrooms. And, and now I'm working at a university where it's much smaller. It's about 65 students at most. We're talking about the extreme opposite. And my students love it. And I like I said, I asked them, why did you pick this program? Well, they always say small classes. And I always said in my mind, like, wow, I am so different because I love large classes. Like when I would have, right? But then I started unpacking this. I was speaking about this with our academic advisors. So we have 2 academic advisors for the psychology students at the University of Gopomber, and they know a lot about our students because from day one till graduation they have the same. That's your academic advisor. You're not. The one thing you're not is anonymous. Okay, so everyone knows you. They will know you for 4 years. So I was unpacking this with them, and what I realized finally in conversation is that, yes, I went to institutions that had huge class sizes, but actually I had this very strong friend group. I went into university with a friend group, and I'll be honest, I didn't put that much effort into anything because my friend group organized everything. They would organize, like, we all had to take the same classes. So they would organize, okay, everyone go to this class, this section. I just did it. I just enrolled in those things, and like I walked to class. I was not super, let's just say not type A. So I would walk to class like as it's starting, and there's a seat there for me with my friend group. So like, yeah, there's thousands of faces I don't know, but I already know where to go. They told me where to go. I have to go there and the left and then look for them, and there's a seat. There I am. So I actually had this experience of going to this large university, but kind of like in the small classroom situation, like very much with the same people. There were 10 people I had every class with, every section. So it was actually like I was in a small classroom with my friends, right? So I bring this back to your question, like any challenges I faced. It's really like, it's funny. This is true story though, but 4 years ago I applied for this position. It was a volunteer committee kind of service position, and one of my mentors at the time suggested that I apply for it. See, people come to me. That's what mentors do. They point out these opportunities and say, apply. And so, I mean, I didn't get it. Let's just say, you don't always win, right? But I was working on my statement, and my mentor said to me, like, why don't you include, if you would like, and maybe I'm going to go to hell for this. He actually said that, but that you're a minority, you're a woman of color. And I'm like, oh, that didn't even really dawn on me, because I think that I've always had these mentors and these friends, like close colleagues, who kind of always have cushioned me. And it's not to say that I haven't had bad experiences and challenges, but I think that in large part, I've been shielded or protected because I have my support group. And I think that proactive, it's not that, oh, something bad happened to me, I need your help. I think they actually work to shield you, proactively shield you from some of these things, because I think that you're stronger in groups. Right? That, like, oh, there's Alice. She, her mentor is this person. He's fantastic. And this lady, and she's amazing. And like, it's almost like if you give trouble to one person in a close group, you're giving trouble to all of them.
Yeah.
Right? So I think in many ways I've been just privileged to meet people in my life who have always been, and I try to do the same for them too, don't get me wrong, right? So I would say I should have probably, statistically, should have had a much harder life, I think. But I think I've really, in hindsight, been shielded by mentors, close colleagues, networks, like that, like the big classroom, the big university. I don't know that I actually experienced that as I went through, my undergraduate studies in this huge university, because I've just been shielded from that. And maybe I didn't appreciate it enough at the time, but now I am super thankful.
Yeah.
So I think that I don't want to show off and I don't want to brag, but I think I've had a pretty good life.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it underscores the importance of having these connections and groups and looking out for one another. And I think for psychology students in particular, they can feel a little bit on their own, but we've interviewed people who are part of created psychology societies, and they're very close, and I think kind of have the same kind of dynamic that you just described.
Absolutely.
So, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of student trajectories and career focus, what advice would you give to psychology students who want to make an impact in research and their education?
Okay, wow. Okay. I always say, again, always be open. Always be open to all opportunities that come in different forms. Don't look for specific titles. Look for what you're going to do and the experience. Like, what will you learn from it? And who will you meet? Who are you going to connect with? Right? I think that's more important than titles. I think it's okay to explore outside of psychology as well. Like outside. What does outside mean? Psychology is such a vast discipline, and it's so interdisciplinary, right? I think that the position may say marketing, but there's a lot of psychology there, right? So pay more attention to like the actual experience. I think you should always be curious. I think it's okay to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think it looks better on a young person to be asking questions, of course, in a nice, polite way, but don't withhold anything. In the worst case scenario, someone will say, I can't answer that question, but that's it. I always say, seek mentors, seek support groups. I think that it is very easy to find people who are highly competitive and maybe not the person who will lend a helping hand. But I think that you can model what success is. And I think that, another tip is to organize, right? I think more and more today, it's going to be challenging, if not impossible, to make a huge impact on your own. You need to create allies. Like you need to organize yourself, like find your people. Find the people who have the same values and same goals as you, connect and work together, because you will create so much more change and impact working together. And you know what? It's not about, at some point in time, it's not about you and you being successful. It's about your goal and achieving your goal. And I think that competitiveness kind of dissipates. I mean, I'm talking about my experience. I went to a large university. I did have my friend group, but I remember, like, not within my friend group, but like outside my friend group, it was so competitive. Like, wow, you felt the tension. You felt like people did not hold doors open for each other. People did not share lab notes. People did not share, but that could have been a specific ecosystem, a specific context. Yeah.
I mean, frankly, you do hear that about U of T pretty frequently. I'm just going to jump ahead to this. Okay, so at Enriched Mindset, we're interested in financial psychology.
Yes.
And we often ask this question to our guests. What do you feel is the relationship between money and happiness?
Oh, wow. You know what? I think you need enough money to take care of yourself, like physically have shelter, all the basics, eat, have shelter, support your family. It is nice to have money to have freedom of time, right? We're talking about quality of life. We're talking about happiness. We're talking about quality of life. You want to have that time to rest, spend time with friends and your family, have a hobby, right? And that is all, I think, allowable or enabled by having funds. If you don't have the funds, let's say this, if you're making less at an hourly rate, you need to work more, right, to be able to cover your basic necessities. So, you do need a certain amount of money to have that flexibility and freedom, to have this optimal time. I do think it's important to work. I mean, as long as you're doing a job that you find meaningful and that's valuable. But I think we all know money is not the answer to all happiness. I think you need a certain amount, right, to give you the freedom to have this quality of life. But you could have all the money in the world, and I don't think you'll necessarily be happy.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I like that. So we just want to get a basis if you're comfortable with sharing your journey.
Yeah.
Or advice on wealth building for people in education and the range of income that can come from being a leader in a field such as yours.
That was a lot of questions. I'll answer the last one first.
Sure.
When I think there is a stigma associated with talking about money, compensation, salary. At the same time, it's a real world question. It's important. Like let's talk about, if we're going to be real about it, money is important for all the reasons just discussed. Like it gives you that freedom of time to spend time with your family and so forth. I think students should know that the range of salaries can be quite vast. And there's no clear-cut answer because it really depends on where are you working, like your institution, your context, maybe even across provinces, I'll say, because there's different policies across, right? And I would say that there are two main things that come into play, right? It's your collective agreement at your institution. Every institution has their own collective agreement. So there's not a universal answer to say, this is your range of your salary if you do this job versus this position versus this position. So it depends on which position you are thinking about, but also what is your experience at that point in time. So not everyone is going to have the same entry because their experience will be different. You'll have a different employer, right? Hiring employer who will have different factors to consider. And also your institution will have a different set kind of framework. So my advice, like really, and it's not that I don't want to share information, but I think my most accurate response would be, if you're interested in working somewhere, you can look up their collective agreement. This is made public. And then you can look for the position that you're interested in, if it's an academic or faculty position or a leadership position, whatnot, right? And then you need to factor in, like, be realistic. Where are you right now in your career, right? Where do you think you fall? And then you can match yourself up. Because there's no cookie cutter answer to that.
Right. Now, shifting back to psychology, if you could give one piece of career advice to students and recent grads, what would it be?
We are at this time, I think, where there's so much potential. I think it's great if you want to do the traditional positions. If we need clinical psychologists, we need professors. But my advice, I think, for myself, if I was graduating right now, I would look for gaps and places where psychological knowledge can have a lot of impact. And I would try to be a leader in that niche field, because I think that with the way things are going in the world, we need solutions, right? And we can't keep doing the same thing over and over. Again, not to say we do need clinical psychologists, but we need more, right? And I think it's time to push that paper forward and take some calculated risks. I'm not saying risk at all, but like take some calculated risk, be curious, and be confident in yourself in terms of and what you can do. I think that young people have so much energy and potential and insight, right? Like you have a different insight than I would have right now. And I think that you should use it, make the most of it. And you're the leader. Like the young people right now are the leaders of tomorrow. So I think that don't try to be us, be the leaders of tomorrow.
I really like that. That's great advice.
Yeah.
Can you share with us what's next for you in your research and teaching initiatives?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, one for me, I would like to share some of the findings of my current research. I'll say, like, I shared some of it. And I said it's forthcoming. So I think that for me, it's a responsibility to share that because I think it has a lot of implications that could help a lot of people. So it would be disseminating that. I think moving forward, I'm very intrigued by artificial intelligence. I'm intrigued about, its connection or its potential connection with education equity, how, it can be used in many positive ways to level out unfair or unequal playing grounds or starting points. And I would like to see how it can be governed in a way that is best for all people, and how it can be used to propagate education. Yeah.
And how can students learn more about your research and what you're doing?
Great question. I mean, I don't have a podcast, but you ask such great questions. I think I'm going to have to think about that because that is very important. One of my goals is also to share more and to really, I'm becoming more and more cognizant of how, let's just say, privileged and blessed I've been. And, I want to be able to share my, what my lessons with my students, but also these findings, find a way that I can share it with lots of people, like the general public, in an effective way. So I don't know, but I will let you know so that you can help me let other people know.
For sure.
That's awesome. Dr. Kim, do you have any final words or wisdom for students looking to maximize their learning potential?
Oh, wow. Okay. Maximize their learning potential. Well, I mean, there are a lot of guides out now on cognitive learning principles. I don't know if that was the canned answer there. But I would say be proactive. Like really, really be proactive. You can seek out these resources, but also in terms of your experience, like it's up to you, really. Like whatever context or situation you're placed in, you can make decisions. So if you are in a lecture and it's very, let's just say boring, and they're just spewing information out to you, you can take that information and not, I was going to say modulate it, but you can engage with it in your mind in a different way. Like you can add your own visualizations, right? If it's just a lot of text, you can think about how does that, what the prof just said, how does that apply to my life? How does it make a difference in this world? So make the best out of every situation. Don't be afraid to ask your instructor to give some real life examples. Like you have agency as well, whatever situation you're in. So I would say be proactive, not just seeking out resources, but I would say connecting even with your instructors about how they might change the way that they're teaching.
For sure.
Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I mean, I learned about you through LinkedIn. not just through your posts, but from posts from the students, and you can kind of feel the connection they have with you.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
just want to thank you for the time you take to mentor students and for also being a leader in trying to change the classroom. I think it's so important, getting students engaged and then promoting the discipline of psychology. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for all the incredible work your whole team is doing. Fascinating and so helpful for all of us.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
What makes a great mentor? Someone who hands you the answers or someone who helps you discover your own? Today's guest, Dr. Alice Kim, is the latter. She's the chair of psychology at the University of Guelph-Humber, a leading researcher in memory and learning, and a recipient of the 2025 Outstanding Mentorship Award. Dr. Kim is known for helping students see their potential, take on challenges they never imagined, and thrive, both in and beyond the classroom. Get ready for an inspiring conversation with Dr. Alice Kim, mentor, scholar, and champion of student success.